So, we're going to be speaking about the 5 Linux distributions that I've personally used, that you've had to live through me suffering through, okay, and that I've used in a more business type environment at our school, and I've put it on PCs there. And we're going to talk about just my personal use for them too. So this is going to be like my opinions about the OSs and what didn't work for me. And since you've never really used any of them, your opinion as to why you wouldn't use it or what might interest you in using it someday. So we're going to start off with Linux Mint.
What originally drew you to Linux Mint?
Okay, Linux Mint was at first just like, it was just the talk online, you know, you type in download Linux, you get Ubuntu, Linux Mint, and like, those are the top, and everybody said Mint was good. I think what really drew me to Mint was probably the desktop. It was really pretty. Back at the time, it was like version 13 of Mint. I can't believe we're to 18 now, and I still hate it. But at the time, it could play media, high definition movies by default, better than any other Linux distro I've ever installed. It's got the best support for that kind of thing. That's why a lot of people say that if you're not going to use Windows and you want to use Linux Mint, because I'll give it to them, or the team that builds this OS, that Linux Mint does the same things Windows does, just as well. If you've got a computer good enough to run it. Okay, because I won't get into the issues with it yet. We'll speak about that last, I guess. Like, have you ever used Mint?
No.
Okay. Well, is there anything attractive about this OS to you at all? I mean,
Well, if I'm to look at it, it looks still somewhat similar to the Windows environment.
well, I think that's exactly what it's going for too.
Yeah.
I mean, at the time I'd started using it, it brought that little piece of crap Dell laptop I had with the Core 2 in it to life. Like, it could finally play 1080p videos. Okay, I don't know how it did, because now Linux Mint, in my experience, has worse performance than Windows on lower end hardware. But no, I liked Mint. My biggest problem with it now is unless you have a GPU that has a good amount of dedicated video RAM in it, you're probably not going to be able to run it comfortably. It'll function, and most people only care about that. But with me, I like for animations to be smooth. I like for everything to be fluent, because I click on one thing to the next, and I don't need any windows slowing down or getting frozen.
With me, what you notice is the way I use Windows, animations are completely disabled. It's very vanilla experience.
Yeah, you do a lot of questionable things in Windows, like you haven't updated it since 2015.
December 5th.
So I mean, I'm running on anniversary update, and I love it. And I've got all the security patches and everything, and you're still running with animations disabled nonetheless.
Is that a problem, sir?
It is.
Just because my mouse cursor is black and not white, does not mean you can judge me for my questionable
I
acts
can give
of
2 less
security.
shits what the color of your mouse pointer is, because guess what? Mine leaves trails. But anyway, so that's Linux Mint. Next, we're going to go to Ubuntu. As I said, the only problems I really have with Mint is performance on lower end hardware. Other than that, Linux Mint, from my experience, has always worked on any NVIDIA graphics driver I've thrown at it. It always works. So we're going to move on to Ubuntu, which is kind of Linux Mint's sperm donor, I guess you could say. And this is the first Linux OS, one of the first 2 that I ever discovered personally. It was this, and it was Linux Lite. And I might actually open up a tab at the end for that too, because Linux Lite was life-changing for me at the time. But Ubuntu is basically what Linux Mint is based off of, and Ubuntu has many different flavors to it. Kind of like Debian, which we'll get to at the end of the video. But with Ubuntu, there is a fuck ton of problems with Ubuntu. Mostly, the issues that I've experienced with it are Compiz, which is the window manager, which really, really bad, especially on integrated Intel graphics like I think it's the Q35. That's what it's called. It's 375 megabytes, I believe, in the Lenovo I have, of integrated graphics. Okay, RAM. Well, that should be more than enough to handle Ubuntu.
It's more than enough to handle Windows.
It is, yeah. Windows 10 runs animation-wise fine. Here's the problem with Ubuntu. Not only does Compass crash often, sometimes the whole OS will crash. Okay.
Which still happens with Windows 10, but very rarely.
It never happens to me though. But then it's never happened to me. I mean,
it happened a lot with Windows 8.1.
That's never happened to me either. It crashing. I've never really had Windows just crash on me, unless it was a bad GPU. I did have Windows crash on me in a really crappy Nobilis AMD computer from like 2005. It had the GeForce 6 series integrated graphics, which was fucking shit.
Yeah.
And it did crash. It crashed often, mainly because it just couldn't use the graphics card. I mean, but anyway, Ubuntu wouldn't even install. Ubuntu, that's what I worked with for the longest time till I got a GPU, was the 6 series integrated graphics, and Ubuntu would not, after 12.04, I believe was the last version I used on a computer with that graphics driver, would not run on any computer. You'd have to use another Ubuntu flavor. Ubuntu GNOME would not run either. However, Ubuntu Mate, which is going to be the next thing we talk about, runs on it. But I like Ubuntu. Ubuntu seems more like the Linux OS for those with higher end PCs. Later
it's definitely
PCs.
One of the most well-known links.
It is. I mean, and everything is kind of built off of it. I feel like it's really getting pushed into the background a little bit though, because other bigger companies, are coming along and they're like, they're making Linux distributions. Even Ubuntu, not even Ubuntu is getting pushed to the background. It's Ubuntu with Unity. It is the main Ubuntu distribution that people are having problems with, and a lot of people use it. With the GPU that I'm using now on this Windows 10 PC, Ubuntu would run, but Compiz would still crash. That's a gigabyte of dedicated VRAM, and it
just for the OS.
Just Ubuntu. Ubuntu is the only thing that would crash. Only. Ever. So, next we're going to talk about my like flavor of Ubuntu, which is kind of like the way Ubuntu used to be before Unity was introduced. And that's Ubuntu Mate, which, in my experience so far, has suffered from very minor issues. Things that I'm sure will be patched in the future, and I hope are. Because I think Ubuntu Mate is great. From the get-go, it's very customizable. It's just got a great theme look to it. And it works. I mean, the only problems I've had with Ubuntu Mate are little trivial things like files would corrupt and transfer from the Ubuntu Mate machine to a flash drive, and then Windows couldn't recognize the files. Not only that, sometimes Ubuntu Mate wouldn't even start to the transfer process at all. When you drag and drop a file from a directory on the hard drive to the flash drive, it wouldn't copy. And I had a big problem with screensavers not working. They would go black, and then the screen would come back awake, no matter what screensaver it was, as well as ejecting flash drives. They don't seem so small issues, like they don't seem small anymore.
They don't seem small on paper,
but I mean, for the general user,
experience.
Yeah. I mean, and if that's something you're going to be doing, like, I plan on editing a lot of audio and video and shit from the future, so I can't have an OS that can't copy files. I can't lose that data. But, these things could be fixed. They probably will be with the next LTS release in about a year and a half, so Ubuntu Mate is definitely something. But, see, that may be a problem for me, specifically because of the hardware I was running it on. But it was still pretty decent. I mean, a Core 2 Duo with 4 megabytes of level 2 cache.
I mean, in 2017, it's still useful.
Yeah, completely. I mean, that computer can run Ubuntu. The only fucking problem is Compass. The only thing that makes it crash, but that's Ubuntu, mate.
Moving on to another distro, which is OpenSUSE.
Yeah. Which we couldn't find a great starter webpage for. But OpenSUSE, for me, has been a very rocky ride. This is the only Linux distribution I've ever had any trouble installing on a computer, and that is for two reasons. One, there's two ways to install it: a live install or the 4.7 gigabyte image. For the longest time, I only had a 4 gig USB, so I couldn't use that. And the live install image would never work. Okay, biggest problem I had was it wouldn't write anything to the hard drive, or it would install all the data and then the bootloader would go to the wrong place. So, other than that, I did get OpenSUSE on that Lenovo of mine, and it ran beautifully. The problem with it really started stemming from the graphics. Once again, I don't think that it's the integrated graphics at all. I really don't, because it works fine with Ubuntu Mate and other lightweight Linux distributions. The problem with it was running KDE Plasma 5, which is known to be extremely buggy. I mean, it's been out for a little over a year now, and it's still got some issues. But for some reason, if you were watching a video on YouTube in Firefox, and if you tried to click on the taskbar, ever so often, KDE would crash. It would reload, however. It wouldn't just kill your system, but it would crash, and that's another thing that I didn't want to deal with. Other than that, OpenSUSE has the best settings manager. Yes, I mean, it is amazing. If you want a Linux distribution for stability, and you want it to be good, like, and modern, and just it was the perfect experience. Unfortunately, it didn't work for me. Maybe for the better. Maybe I'll just stick with Windows from now on. But
great. So moving on to Debian, if possible.
Yeah, the granddaddy of three of these first OSs over here is Debian. I've used Debian probably, technically speaking, more than any other Linux distribution base. You got Debian, you've got the Red Hat Linux, the Fedora, and the RPM base. You've got Pac-Man for Arch Linux. You've got a bunch of different Linux distributions that have their own distributions. So Debian is kind of like one of the oldest though, and it is, in my experience, the most stable, no matter what version of it you're running. Only problem with Debian is sometimes it really sticks with the we don't like licensed drivers thing. Ubuntu's kind of killed that, and so is Mint in a way. They're allowing proprietary software into the system. But in Debian is definitely for the person that knows how to use Linux. But, I mean, still, I don't know.
When you think about their website, Debian, the Universal Operating System, you want to be the Universal Linux user.
Yeah, I mean, and Debian has run on everything I've ever thrown it at. Now, if you're running Debian GNOME, and it's trying to do GNOME 3 on some older hardware, it's probably not going to work. But XFCE, Debian is super stable, easy to use. I mean, the only problem with it is something that I can't get over is screen tearing and VSync, okay? And window compositing. I like all that stuff to be enabled because I watch a lot of footage and films and documentaries and videos too. And, it's important to me for the quality of the film to be accurate.
Yeah, that would be a viewable experience.
Yeah.
Have it to where you could edit it if you have to.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the kind of person that screen tearing can just screw up my whole viewing experience. It can make everything so distracting. I'm not like some people that can play CSGO with no VSync and it looks like shit, but it runs at 100-something frames per second, but whatever. Anyway, but Debian is definitely one for the books. I would not recommend running the GNOME version unless you've got a decent NVIDIA card. I would still not recommend the GNOME version because I don't like GNOME 3 at all anymore. I used to care for it somewhat, but nowadays I think Mate is probably what you'd want to stick with. But, so...
I mean, looking at the operating system, there aren't really a lot of photos here, but I've seen Debian being run on Raspberry Pis quite often.
Yeah, they actually use Ubuntu Mate is really popular for that right now.
Same with OpenSUSE.
But yeah, Raspberry Pi. I don't even remember that.
I could eat some right now.
Okay, but the last thing we're gonna cover we didn't have open is the Linux distribution that got me into Linux.
Linux Lite.
and it works. Okay, that's all you need to know. It's based on XFCE, the desktop environment is, and this is great. This is, I mean, it's based on Ubuntu. I have no, I don't. What the fuck? Yes, okay, I disabled it. You fucking Linux Lite. I thought you were simple.
I thought we were.
What the hell? I don't.
You have to wait. Listen.
Am I gonna have to disable my ad blocker? For you, Linux Lite.
Let's just trim that out.
For you, I'll do it. Okay, Linux Lite, for me, I thought it was so elegant at first. I love the feather. I mean, I don't really like where it is now, okay? I don't at all. But when I first installed it, and up until like middle 2014, I loved Linux Lite. It would run on my laptop. It was actually the last OS to run on my first real desktop PC that I kept. That it died with it, so... Linux Lite is based on Ubuntu, though. I had one issue with it I can think of, and that was something crashed, I believe, and on reboot, it tried to load the Ubuntu login screen. So it was like, I was like, wow, that's lazy. They didn't even do a great job at hiding the shit. What the hell?
I mean, I see it. That's Steam support right there, but that's...
But see, it's completely different now. Like I said, last time I used Linux Lite, I didn't like the interface has changed quite a bit. I didn't really care for that. But other than that, if you're looking for like a starter Linux distribution that works, it's always worked on all my NVIDIA hardware. It's always worked in general. Like if you start tweaking with shit in any Linux distro, you can get little cracks to show, you know. So,
yeah.
But
I mean, even with Windows, you're not going to find it's fully smoothed out. There's going to be rough patches.
I will say though, with the anniversary update, and that's something we'll probably make a video on some other time. You know, people that run the anniversary update like me.
When I get my SSD, I'm going to do a clean install.
Okay, well, it's good. Probably do that anyway. Anyway, before we get off track here, yeah, those are the top 5 Linux distributions that I've used personally, that I've used on computers at the vocational school I go to, and we run a very business-oriented environment there. I mean, everything we do there is considered professional by peers. We've had teachers from other schools bring us 30 to 40 computers, and we've been put in charge of cleaning them all and repairing them and getting them working. We do use Windows as our primary OS there, so I have to work with it. So
Windows 10.
Yeah, Windows 10 we're moving everything from 7 to 10. We're also getting better PCs slowly but surely and getting rid of all the old ones we have. Fucking Power PCs upstairs and shit, and Pentium 3s.
I want to do something with those XPSs that are up there.
I want to do something with those G4 Max. I really do.
Okay, so I'd say this is close to the end.
Yeah.
Of our recording.
We're reaching like the 20-minute mark. So
We're
I would say that for any people out there that want to try Linux and you have a decent PC, I'd say Ubuntu Mate and Linux Lite, and maybe even Linux Mint, like the Mate edition, even Cinnamon or XFCE. Those and some of the Debian too, like Mate and XFCE. Definitely give those a look and try them out. I mean, if you're interested in Linux, but if you're gonna want to run like Ubuntu with Unity and OpenSUSE and some of these other distributions like Fedora.
I mean, but that's just the point of Linux. Go out and try it.
Yeah, you've got so many options available. These are just the top ones that I've used. So yeah, definitely give that a check out.
I'd say that's a good stopping point.
Yeah, so I hope you enjoy the this long rambling about Linux.
Commentary.
So thank you for watching.